A longtime fan favorite, Dizzy returns to Guilty Gear Strive as Queen Dizzy. While she retains a lot of her classic aspects, they also change his character quite a bit in her transition from Guilty Gear Xrd, and so today, now that she's been out for a bit, I wanted to find out how good is Dizzy actually. So I make a checklist for each character based on the 4 phases of fighting games. Offense, so when a character is making another character block. Defense, when the character is blocking an opponent's character. Neutral, that phase of the game where the characters are moving around the screen, using moves and vying for control. And finally, knockdown, when you end your combo and set up your stronger offense. And we're going to start this list with offense. A good offense is important because once you catch your opponent, you do want them to feel threatened. The last thing you want is your opponent to feel relaxed while you're doing offense to them. And the first question we have on this list is, does Dizzy have any moves that are plus on block? So she has quite a few, but she does have a weird thing in that her close slash is curiously not plus. She is similar to characters like Axel and Faust and having a -1 on block close slash. The trade-off is her close slash has a very large proximity range. So Guilty Gear has both close slash and far slash. Dizzy's close slash proximity is bigger than many other characters. So she can do close slash from around here, where other characters would generally get far slash at that same range, which is a unique advantage for the character. That being said, it's not like she does not have moves that are plus on block. So she has this dagger move, which people call Chestnut, and previously both of these hits were projectiles, so she was able to loop this, and it was pretty hard to deal if you didn't know what to do. But they did something similar to Testament, where the first hit is a physical attack and the second one is a projectile. So if you FD it, it will push you out quite a bit. But this move is quite advantageous on block, as it could be maximum +8. She also has her fish, but this takes time to set up, so I don't think it's as meaningful as Chestnut. And she has a command normal charge 6H that is Guard Crush, which is heavily advantageous at +12. The next question is, does a character have a instant or fast overhead of some sort? Having an instant overhead is definitely character defining. It's a very strong tool to have because it's something that can't be reacted to. It's instant. Milia's Bad Moon is so iconic that in other games, if a character has a mix-up behind a projectile, they call the character Milia. That being said, Dizzy doesn't have anything unique. So she doesn't have anything that's not universal. So something like fast BRC overhead. The next question is, does she have a safe 5D? So this is pretty important because if you don't have an instant overhead like Milia's Bad Moon that I showed before, or something like Baiken Ziozansen, funny enough that I've made both these characters in this game, then your next best option after the fast BRC overhead would be the universal overhead Dust. So this is reactable, but it's pretty hard and it's kind of character specific of how difficult it actually is to react to. So the big thing is that if you block it, you're extremely punishable. So having one that you can make safe on block is a huge advantage in this game, because not only will you be able to combo off it, but you'll also be able to maintain your offense if they block, making your character very threatening. To my knowledge, she can't do this. For some reason, I always have written down that she can. So if there is a way, definitely let me know. I did some research on this. I could not find a way for it to do it. And the next question would be then, does the character have a 50-50 of some sort? So she does have a couple of these. The main thing though is that these generally come from knockdown, so this is something we have to touch on later. Of note is that since her charge 6H is a guard crush, if you do get someone to block this, you have enough advantage to strike through them with no throw protection, which is a strong option. The next question is, how fast does a character build meter? Games are decided by tension, so being able to build it quickly is very important in this game, to the point that high level matches can be decided by small decisions revolving around meter. The good news for Dizzy is that this character is pretty active in neutral. She has big special moves, and she has things that she can do from full screen, and doing special moves builds meter. On top of that, paying attention to the opponent's guard will give her opportunities to sneak in more opportunities to build more meter. So the combination of these two makes me feel like she's okay at this. The next question is, what do they get off their throw situation? So the last thing you would want is someone getting thrown and not caring about it. Now, she does have some of her classic structures, like summoning a fish and using strike throw with the fish to protect her. I've also seen players use the fish to try to set up charge 6H in this situation too. which would give her far more frame advantage. Also, in the case that she has Wings of Light, then she could use her throw to stall for time. So I think this is a decent situation for her. The next question is, how safe is the character against guard cancel, aka YRC? YRC is important because you can just reverse the situation right away, and depending on your character, you might have a very strong advantage here if your YRC is successful. That being said, Dizzy is pretty standard. She doesn't have kicks that are safe to YRC, which some characters do have. So here she's pretty standard, using jabs and moves you can't YRC, like her charge 6H or her Wild Assault. Next question is, how safe is the character against bursts? I don't think she's very safe. She has pretty long combos, and they involve like restands and moves like Far Slash from 5H and Ice Spike, which have a lot of total duration. So she doesn't have like special ways of baiting bursts that other characters might have. Next question is, does the character need to hit you to win? This one might sound a little weird, but essentially the idea here is, if you don't need to necessarily hit somebody to get your game plan started, you have a pretty huge advantage. Characters that are able to start their game plans by making you block, or even worse, from neutral, have a huge advantage over characters that don't really get started unless they have a certain status effect on you, or they, as the question asks, hit you. That being said, I do think Dizzy kind of needs to hit you to win. But the good news is she does play from far ranges, so she can hit you with a stray and get started, as opposed to having to approach and then also hit you on top of that. Also, in theory, this character can hit you and then do Wall of Light and drain your life after that, but since it takes so much time for Wall of Light to happen, it's not something you see a lot, so I feel like it's kind of like taking a star from somebody in Mario Party at the end of the game, you know? Like, it's a nice thing to have. It's a nice thing to do. It doesn't really cost anything to do Wings of Light until it actually activates. But outside of that, like, bonus party star thing, she kind of has to hit you first to get started. Next question is, how much damage does a character do on average? One thing that could definitely get people scared of you is your character doing a lot of damage on average. Kai Kisuke here got a nerf where he is not as good at hitting backdashes as he was before. So now people are less scared of doing it because they're not getting carried to the corner each time they get hit. So being able to do a lot of damage on average will discourage people from challenging your offense, or force them to take bigger risks than they want because they want to escape. From what I've seen, Dizzy's damage is somewhat average. So nothing too special or standout in this game, like certain characters using certain moves. The next question is, how good is the character against Deflect Shield? So you want to be good against Deflect Shield because typically, if a character has good Deflect Shield options, players will tend to just do it right away, whatever it is. So being good against characters' typical Deflect Shield options is a pretty good advantage in my opinion. That being said, I have like a mixed feeling on Dizzy here. I thought she would actually be pretty good against it, but I think she's actually pretty weird into it. It's mostly around this normal. The previous example I showed, Kai players really like doing Stun Dipper after Deflect Shield sometimes because it travels really quickly and it low profiles and this stuff, and he gets frozen in that spot. I think she is really specific in this situation. She's not really automatically taking care of it, which is pretty good news for her because some characters are very annoyed by Deflect Shield pushing them off and stopping either mix-ups or stopping pressure straight up. Next is her wall break situation. I think her wall break situation looks pretty good because she can like set up, go back to neutral, build meter from neutral. So I don't think it's so bad. I do know there's also structures for her that involve trying to get Wing of Light without breaking the wall. So the flexibility here seems pretty good to me. And then finally, what type of Wild Assault does this character have? She has blue Wild Assault. This is meant for setup characters. In her case, it comes up situationally for combos and setup Wings of Light. So next, we need to talk about defense. Defense is important because defense honestly wins tournaments, and offense is pretty good to be good at, but defense is pretty hard to be good at. It's a combination of your knowledge of the game, your read on what your opponent is doing, and what your character can do. Having good defense is great because you can immediately flip a situation from defense to offense if you're playing the right character or have the right situation available to you. But if your character has bad defense for some reason, then when you're blocking, you're like really blocking and you might feel like you're just losing big time. So for starters, the first question is, what is her fastest button? And she has a 5 frame 2P. This is pretty average for this game. Now, the main reason why everyone's fastest normal is bare minimum of 5 frame 2P is because of the throw protection system. When this game came out, some characters like Milia and Faust had 6 frame normals as their fastest normal, which means that if you use a 6 frame normal, since the game only has 5 frames of throw protection when you exit hit stun and block stun and on wake up, if someone was advantageous and you use a 6 frame normal to swing, the throw will beat your normal. So having a 5 frame normal is very important here so that you can use the throw protection to protect yourself. It being on a crouching normal is an advantage too, because when you are choosing to mash, you're already going to be crouching, so you'll be able to reverse situations very easily by mashing on P. That being said, she's not super good at converting her to P. While she can combo into her S Micro Sword on counter hit, she can't really do it off multiple. The main reason why it combos here is because the 2P is counter hit, so on normal hit it's not going to happen. You do have the option of using 2P 6P into Micro Sword, but her 6P is not very large, so there are times where you'll mash and your 6P will whiff. So even though she has the speed on her button, she might not necessarily have the ability to convert it, which I actually think is quite a decent weakness for this character. The next question is, does the character have a meterless reversal? Having a reversal keeps your opponent honest, but having a meterless reversal will have your opponent on their toes at all times, depending on how they feel about risk of return. It also makes it so that people can't extend pressure for a really long time, because they have to look for this. Typically, zoners don't have meterless reversals, and Dizzy is not an exception here. The next question is, how fast is their metered reversal if they have one? So not every character has a meter reversal. So for example, Happy Chaos does not have a super that has invincibility that he can do a wake up. Neither does, say, Slayer. Dizzy does have a reversal super. It's this Imperial Ray. And unfortunately, this move is not very fast. It's 11 frames plus 1, which is pretty slow. Typically, a fast reversal, meter or no meter, would be 9 frames. And having a fast reversal is good because you can use it in more situations on defense. It's harder for people to cover the option, and in some cases, people will not be able to safe jump them, for example, after a wall break. The next question is, how does the super hit? Is it a horizontal super or a vertical super? This is important because of just the range that you're going to be able to use your super. So for instance, we have the new kid on the block, the new Guilty Gear Strive villain, Potemkin. Don't worry, I'll make a video about him soon, trust. Potemkin has a reversal super with invincibility. The main thing is that his is the extreme of going vertical. This is heavily Potemkin Buster. While he's able to escape things with it because of the invincibility, it doesn't really hit things on the ground. The opponent has to be airborne in advance. Despite the flaw of it being vertical though, he can use the invul to super BRC and do a horizontal reversal anyway. Dizzy, on the other hand, her super is extremely horizontal. It is absolutely massive, so she's able to use her reversal from very long ranges compared to other characters. So despite it being slow and maybe not good against safe jumps, it is good for reversing situations if you are aware of what your opponent is throwing at you. Next question is, how good is the character's backdash? Having a good backdash is important because it helps you just escape situations. Alba has such a high invincible backdash and such a short total duration on her backdash that she's able to punish things that other characters cannot. So that's the power of having a 6 frame invincible, 16 frame total backdash. Now Dizzy in comparison has a slightly below average backdash at 5 frame invincible, which is fine, but 21 frames total. To be fair to her, basically no one can do punishes like the one I just showed. The main thing about it being 21 frame total is that the slower your backdash is, the easier it is for the opponent to react to and cover themselves in case you do backdash. So I do find this to be a slight disadvantage. Next question is, how good is the character 6P? And we're determining this by how fast does the invincibility activate on the 6P. So this is a pretty classic example of why having a fast acting 6P is pretty important, and it's using Leo and Testament. So many players would consider Testament to have one of the best 6Ps in the game, which I would agree with, except this is pretty much a thing for a neutral. On defense, it's a little bit weaker because Testament's 6P does not activate quickly. The string that Leo does pretty commonly, going to 6k, Testament cannot 6P no matter how hard they try. But with a character with a faster acting 6P, so Baiken would be kind of the opposite, where many players think her 6P is not that great. In the same situation, she's able to easily reverse the situation with her 6P because her 6P activates faster. Just a small example of the way that players look at the game as far as moves might not be as simple as it seems. Now, for Dizzy, does have a fast activating 6P, so I think hers is pretty good. The next question is how fast does characters jump? Jumping you use to try to reposition yourself on defense. Basically every character that's not big body has a 4-frame jump. Dizzy does as well, so she's pretty standard here. Having a slower jump just means you might not be able to escape certain things that other characters can. It's actually pretty niche, but I think it's worth mentioning. And the last point circles back to something we talked about with offense, which is do they build meter quickly? But I'm adding a little asterisk to this. I think Dizzy does a pretty decent job of building meter because she can attack from really long ranges, set up projectiles from a distance, and is generally acting a lot when she's far away from a character, and doing things like running at people and doing special moves builds meter. That being said though, I think a little asterisk next to do they build meter quickly, and honestly it should be its own question, is also how much HP does the character have? So from a defensive perspective, your HP pool also affects how much meter you build. High HP characters can do nothing and get hit and build meter. She isn't necessarily a high HP character, but combined with how well that I think she builds meter neutral, I think she builds enough meter that she can use it on defense for supers, YRC, BRC, things like that. So next we have to talk about neutral. I did mention that defense wins tournaments, but neutral also wins tournaments, especially in this game with repeat performers like Nagoriyuki and Happy Chaos, along with newcomers like Johnny. These characters not just have good offense, but also have great neutral. So neutral is very important for a character as well. And the first question here is, can the character attack from safe ranges? Sort of on this one. So Dizzy has some really big special moves, but they are negative and they're pretty committal. In the case that she whiffs, she is vulnerable. She also has the ability to control space with various projectiles and summons. But the summons are not infallible, but the main thing is that they're active and she's not. I would say overall she's able to attack from safe ranges, especially if she's like far. But then also a lot of her main poke, things like her far slash, her 5H, and her sweep, while these buttons are all good, they have a lot of recovery. So they are pretty easy to whip punish. So it feels like you need to have a combination of using really low commit attacks like her 5K, which is pretty huge to be honest, summons, big preemptive mid-screen moves like Michael Sword, in order to really put pressure on the opponent in neutral. So this is a kind of a sort of to me. The main weakness of all these is that I feel like she has to be more preemptive than other characters, which can be a disadvantage in my opinion. The next question is, what type of air dash does the character have? To the chagrin of many longtime Dizzy players, and this is perfectly understandable, she has a normal air dash, and she does not have the double air dash that she used to have. The next question is, does the character have a slow jump H? This is important because slow jump H's like Kai's tend to be pretty good against anti-airs. If not performed quickly, the jump H can reach really deep, and these tend to be good from things like dash jumps, which are far less predictable than something like an air dash, which you have plenty of time to react to. Now, Dizzy does have a slow jump H, but it does not actually hit very deep, as in it's pretty difficult to use this as a typical slow jump H. Now, next question is, can they stall in the air? Stalling in the air is pretty important because it makes you less predictable. 6P is a very strong normal in this game, and without extra air options like using your backdash, double jumping, or stalling, then people would be able to anti-air you very easily, and this would be a very grounded game. Now, Dizzy does have her JD, which keeps air options here, so she does have a way to do this. The next question is, can the character 50-50 you from neutral? The answer is not really. Being able to 50-50 from neutral, even if it costs meter, is very strong because that means you don't actually have to get next to somebody to threaten them. They will have to be worried about things that you can do from any range. Typically, I would not consider Dizzy to have a 50-50 from neutral. The main thing she sort of has is that since this has Guard Crush, you can technically do something by running up after the Guard Crush, but I don't think there's that much very meaningful that they use this for. She would have the opportunities to do so if her fish was stronger, but she does not, unfortunately, so I'm going to say she can't do this. Next question is, can the character do something strong immediately from gold burst? This is pretty important because you reset to neutral after a gold burst, but you do get a knockdown first, so if you're able to do something that the opponent can't stop right away, then you have a pretty good advantage if your gold burst connects. Dizzy has the opportunity to set up, so I think hers is okay. The lowest ranking here, by the way, would be basically just running at the opponent and not being able to use the advantage for really anything. The next question is a Guilty Gear Classic. Does the character have a fuck it RC option? This is using your meter to do something in neutral to just pull up right away and potentially also do a mix-up off it. I don't really think Dizzy has one of these. In Exerd, a typical, maybe not always good because it costs meter, but a typical fuck it RC option for Dizzy would be Ice Spike RC. I don't find it to be as good in this game because it costs 50 instead of 25. Revisiting defense, we have to talk about the 6P again. This being fast also means that she can do it late when people jump in, which is a pretty nice thing to have. Next question is, does the character have things in their toolkit that prevent characters from playing their standard neutral game? Overall, I would say yes, just built into her toolkit because of the ranges she likes to play out. For example, this version of Michael Sword makes it so that people can't just do stuff from far away and even trades favorably. Ice Spike, while being -10, also kind of has this shockwave going on, which hits at almost full screen, where the S version also kind of has this shockwave both inside and outside the move. So there's zones on the screen where she makes it so you can't just do the thing you would normally do. You kind of have to see if she's going to do something preemptive or not and respond to that. It's a pretty good advantage for the character because if she catches you with a stray, she can get pretty good reward. The next question is, can a character convert all of their hits into a good knockdown or wall break without using meter? And the answer is sort of. She has a couple of types of knockdowns. Ideally, she routes into this so that she could pull up and do pretty much what she wants. Generally, if she hits you with the chestnut or a Michael Sword, she has to just set up, which is not super ideal. She would much prefer to set up here compared to here. And finally, can the character dash block? Since there are a couple of characters who can't do it, there's some obvious ones. Nagoriyuki, who can't dash without using Fukyo. Potemkin, who can't dash really without using Hammerfall Break. But there's also Johnny, who carries his weakness from previous Guilty Gear games that he can't do his step dash and block at the same time. Dizzy has a standard dash, so she is able to do it. Now, finally, we must discuss knockdowns. Having a good knockdown is important because you don't want people just wiggling out of your stuff for free. You definitely want them to feel pressured and scared of your option coverage and stronger pressure from knockdown. The first question is, can the character win off throw? I think overall, yes. I do think her throw situation is pretty strong, and honestly something they're probably going to make stronger, maybe. But if there is a weakness of it, it's how much resource can the character build off the throw mix-up. She could do throw into strike or throw here with the coverage, and her throw doesn't build like that much meter compared to the strike. So there's a small aspect of a just take the throw to this. Next question is, can the character protect themselves from reversals and do offense at the same time of their knockdown? And the answer is yes. I do think it's a little bit situational though. So a classic example of Oki for her is this point blank cross up thing that she can do. So this is a cross up, so you have to DP the other way. And since she routes like this, if Kai does a reversal on the other side, and she just blocks it, no problem. She has all sorts of setups, and usually setup characters like this are always able to protect themselves, or you need really specific escapes to get out of what they're doing. Finally, is a good knockdown loopable? I have yes as a question mark, only because I'm not sure of how valuable these sweep knockdown enders are. But she is able to end in knockdown consistently. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. That's Dizzy. Overall, I know people have been calling her the worst character in the game. It seems that her strength is really in neutral and knockdown, and they really toned down her offense because they nerfed Chestnut. There's potential there, but I don't know how to totally word all her problems yet. Part of it is like her buttons are not super great. Plus, I think changing her to a more standard movement character means you can't take advantage of like stalling in the air and stuff. So her ground game feeling weaker, as in her best buttons are like kicks, for example. I am starting to take time to think of how characters fit in the meta right now, so I could plan my style of tier list, like a detailed, long form tier list. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you want access to some early content and exclusive content, that's over on patreon.com/LordKnight. If you're interested in Guilty Gear coaching or any fighting game coaching, I do that over on Medify at medify.gg/@LordKnight. I stream on weekdays at twitch.tv/LordKnight, and that's where we record for our second channel, LordKnight Chronicles, which you can check out on YouTube, which I'm starting back up. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.